As you settle into your warm bed tonight, surrounded by the gentle sounds of modern life, imagine stepping back through time to a world transformed by ice. Just 20,000 years ago, a mere moment in Earth's long history, vast ice sheets stretched across continents, creating landscapes of such pristine beauty and power that they challenge the imagination. Tonight, we'll journey through the last ice age, not as a story of catastrophe, but as Earth's most recent slow dance with climate, a graceful cycle that has repeated dozens of times over the past few million years. We'll discover how the world of ice shaped the very landscapes outside your window, carved the lakes and valleys you know, and set the stage for the warm interglacial period in which all human civilization has flourished. Our journey begins not with ice, but with warmth. A world much like ours, yet subtly different, existing 120,000 years ago, during what scientists call the last interglacial period. Picture Earth as it was then, a planet basking in a gentle warmth that had lasted for thousands of years. The great ice sheets of previous ages had long since melted away, their ancient scars softened by time and vegetation. Sea levels rose higher than today, lapping at coastlines that would seem foreign to our eyes. Where London now stands, warm seas stretched inland. The Mediterranean sparkled under endless summer skies, its waters reaching farther north than they do today. Vast forests carpeted the northern continents with a patience that measured time in centuries. Ancient oaks and elms spread their canopies across lands that would one day know the weight of mile-thick ice. These forests grew in rhythms we can barely imagine. Trees living for 1,000 years, their roots reaching deep into soils that had never known frost, their branches sheltering creatures in a world of endless growing seasons. But even in this warm paradise, the seeds of change were already being sown by forces so vast and slow that they dwarf human comprehension. High above the atmosphere in the cold darkness of space, Earth was beginning a slow, graceful dance with the cosmos, a dance that would gradually, imperceptibly, begin to tilt our planet away from the sun's warming embrace. This celestial choreography, which we now call the Milankovitch cycles, unfolds over tens of thousands of years. Imagine Earth as a spinning top, wobbling gently as it orbits the sun. Sometimes our planet's tilt brings the northern hemisphere closer to the sun during summer, creating seasons of intense warmth. Other times, as happened 120,000 years ago, the tilt begins to change and the summers grow gradually cooler, while winters stretch longer and deeper. The change was so slow that no single generation of trees, animals, or early humans would have noticed. A lifetime might pass with summers imperceptibly cooler than those of childhood, winters that seemed to linger just a day or two longer each year. Yet these tiny changes accumulate like grains of sand in an hourglass, each year adding to the next, until the very character of the planet begins to shift. As you lie in your warm bed tonight, consider how these cosmic forces still guide our world. The same orbital cycles that once brought ice sheets to your doorstep continue their ancient rhythm. We live in what scientists call an interglacial period, a warm pause between ice ages, just like that gentle world of 120,000 years ago. The warmth that surrounds you now, the stable climate that has cradled all of human civilization, exists within this same cosmic dance. In that ancient warm world, The first hints of change appeared not as sudden cold snaps, but as subtle shifts in the rhythm of seasons. Summers that once blazed with endless warmth began to cool by degrees so small they were barely noticeable. Snow that had once melted completely each spring began to linger in mountain valleys, patches of white persisting through increasingly brief summers. The transition was beautiful in its gentleness. Forest boundaries shifted like slow tides, with cold-loving spruces and firs gradually claiming territory once held by warm-weather oaks and maples. Animals moved with these changing zones, their migrations tracking the patient retreat of warmth toward the equator. Rivers changed their courses as rainfall patterns shifted, carving new channels while others ran dry. What makes this transformation so remarkable is its inevitability and naturalness. Earth was not suffering or struggling. It was simply following the ancient rhythms written in the stars. The same forces that had brought warm interglacials before would bring them again. Ice ages are not Earth's punishment or failure, but rather its natural breathing. Long, slow inhales of cold and ice, followed by gentle exhales of warmth and growth. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, let yourself feel connected to this vast story. The sheets that keep you warm exist within the same planetary story that once covered continents in ice. Your comfortable room sits within an interglacial period, a warm chapter in Earth's ongoing climate story that has repeated itself dozens of times over the past few million years. The world was ready for its next great transformation, poised on the edge of an ice age that would reshape continents and redirect the flow of rivers. But that change would come with the patience of stone, the gentleness of falling snow, and the inevitable beauty of Earth's natural cycles. The growing ice. Imagine the most peaceful snowfall you've ever witnessed. Flakes drifting down in perfect silence, each one unique, settling gently on the landscape. Now, extend that serenity across thousands of years, and you begin to understand how the great ice sheets of the last ice age were born. As you rest comfortably in your warm bed tonight, let your mind travel to those ancient winters where snow began to accumulate with a patience that measured time not in hours or days, but in centuries. The transformation began so gradually that it would have been invisible to any single generation. Around 100,000 years ago, as those subtle orbital changes we explored continued their cosmic influence, the character of winter began to shift across the northern continents. In places that had once known reliable spring melts, scattered patches of snow began to persist through increasingly cool summers. Picture these first permanent snowfields as Earth's gentle preparation for what was to come. In the mountains of eastern Canada, in the highlands of Scandinavia, in the elevated regions of Siberia, snow that once melted completely each year began to linger in shaded valleys and on north-facing slopes. These patches were small at first, no larger than the fields you might see from an airplane window, but they carried within them the seeds of continental transformation. Year after year, decade after decade, fresh snow continued to fall upon these persistent patches. The accumulated snow began to compress under its own weight, transforming from the light, airy crystals you might catch on your tongue into something denser and more enduring. The bottom layers, squeezed by the growing weight above, transformed into a substance called neve, granular snow that had survived multiple seasons, taking the first steps on its journey to becoming glacial ice. This process of transformation is one of nature's most patient arts. As more centuries passed, the névé itself began to change, its granules fusing together under pressure until they became glacial ice, dense, blue-tinted, and flowing with an almost liquid grace despite its solid state. These growing masses began to move, not with the violence of avalanches, but with the slow inevitability of honey poured from a jar. The beauty of this growing ice lay not in its speed, but in its persistence. A glacier moves at the pace of fingernail growth, yet, over thousands of years, this steady progress becomes an unstoppable force of landscape transformation. As you lie still in your bed tonight, glacial ice somewhere in the world is moving imperceptibly, but with the same patient determination that once carved the valleys and lakes you know. By 80,000 years ago, these scattered ice patches had grown and merged into true ice sheets, continents spanning rivers of ice that flowed like frozen oceans across the landscape. The Laurentide ice sheet began to spread across what would one day become Canada and the northern United States, growing thicker and wider with each passing millennium. In northern Europe, the Fennoscandian ice sheet expanded across Scandinavia and into the lands that would become Denmark, northern Germany, and western Russia. The ice sheets transformed the very character of the continents beneath them. As the ice grew thicker, eventually reaching depths of over a mile in some places, its immense weight began to press down on the Earth's crust itself. The solid ground, flexible over geological time, responded by slowly sinking, like a mattress compressing under a sleeper's weight. This process, called isostatic depression, demonstrates the ice sheet's incredible mass. They were heavy enough to dimple the planet itself. But perhaps most remarkable was how the ice sheets changed the very air and water of Earth. As more and more of the planet's water became locked up in these frozen reservoirs, sea levels around the world began to drop. Coastlines that had been underwater for thousands of years emerged into daylight. Land bridges appeared between continents, creating pathways that would later guide the migrations of animals and early humans. The ice sheets created their own weather patterns, generating winds that carried their cold influence far beyond their frozen margins. These glacial winds redistributed dust and nutrients across continents, creating the fertile, loess soils that would one day support agriculture across the American Midwest and European plains. Even the atmosphere itself changed, as the vast white surfaces of the ice sheets reflected sunlight back to space, helping to maintain and deepen the cooling that had started the Ice Age. What's truly wondrous about this transformation is how it demonstrates Earth's interconnectedness. The slow accumulation of snow in Canadian mountains eventually affected sea levels in tropical oceans. Ice growing in Scandinavia influenced wind patterns across Asia. The patient growth of glaciers became a planetary phenomenon, proof that Earth functions as a single integrated system where every part influences every other part. Tonight, as you feel the warmth of your blankets, remember that you're experiencing the flip side of this same planetary system. The warmth that surrounds you exists because those great ice sheets retreated, releasing their stored water back to the oceans, allowing the climate to swing back toward the gentle interglacial period in which all human civilization has flourished. The ice sheets continued their patient growth for tens of thousands of years, reshaping continents, redirecting rivers, and preparing the stage for the maximum ice age that was still to come. Like a slow breath being drawn by the planet itself, the ice accumulated with the serene certainty of natural law, creating a world that would challenge our modern imagination. Maximum ice. The frozen world. Close your eyes and imagine standing on a vast, silent plain of ice that stretches beyond every horizon. The air is so still that your breath hangs in crystalline clouds, and the only sound is the gentle whisper of wind across endless, frozen expanses. This was Earth 26,500 to 20,000 years ago, during the last glacial maximum. Not a world of struggle and hardship, but a planet transformed into something magnificent and alien, wearing ice like a glittering robe that stretched from mountain peak to ocean shore. From your warm bed tonight, let your mind travel to this world at the peak of its icy transformation. The great ice sheets we watched grow have now reached their maximum extent, creating landscapes of such surreal beauty that they seem drawn from dreams. The Laurentide ice sheet stretched from the Arctic Ocean to what would one day become New York City, from the Pacific coast to the Atlantic, covering an area larger than Antarctica today. Its ice reached thicknesses of over 2 miles in places, so deep that if you could somehow stand on its surface above what is now Hudson Bay, you would be higher above the underlying ground than commercial jets fly above us today. Imagine the profound silence of this ice-covered world, with so much of the planet's surface locked beneath frozen quiet. Sound traveled differently across the landscape. The absence of forests, rivers, and wildlife across vast regions created a hush so complete it seems almost sacred. Yet this silence wasn't empty. It was full of subtle voices. The ice itself spoke in gentle creaks and sighs as it moved, compressed, and adjusted to its own immense weight. Occasionally, the sharp crack of ice under pressure would echo like thunder across the frozen plains, a reminder of the enormous forces at work beneath the serene surface. The ice sheets were not static monuments, but rivers of frozen water flowing with liquid grace despite their solid state. Near their centers, where the ice was thickest, the movement was almost imperceptible, inches per year, like the growth of mountains. But toward their edges, the ice flowed faster, carving valleys, polishing bedrock, and carrying countless tons of rock and soil, like a cosmic conveyor belt reshaping the face of continents. What makes this frozen world truly remarkable is how it revealed hidden aspects of our planet. With so much water locked in ice, sea levels dropped by over 400 feet, enough to expose vast areas of the ocean floor as dry land. The Bering Land Bridge emerged between Asia and North America, creating a highway hundreds of miles wide that connected continents. Britain became a peninsula of Europe as the English Channel and North Sea became valleys and plains. Indonesia's islands merged into larger landmasses, and the Mediterranean Sea shrank to a fraction of its current size. These exposed lands weren't barren wastelands, but became thriving ecosystems adapted to the Ice Age world. Vast grasslands called mammoth steppes stretched across the exposed continental shelves and ice-free regions, supporting herds of woolly mammoths, rhinoceros, and bison in numbers that would dwarf today's African migrations. These steppes were maintained by the unique climate of the Ice Age, cold and dry, with powerful winds that prevented forests from establishing, and maintained the grasslands that fed the great herbivores. The beauty of the Ice Age world lay in its patterns and zones. Immediately adjacent to the ice sheets, the landscape transformed into periglacial regions, areas permanently frozen but not covered by ice. Here, the ground remained locked in permafrost, sometimes hundreds of feet deep, creating unique landforms and ecosystems. Polygon patterns formed in the soil as freeze-thaw cycles created geometric designs visible from great heights. Ice wedges grew in the ground like frozen tree roots, and pingos, hills of earth pushed up by underground ice, dotted the landscape like earthen monuments to the cold. Beyond these frozen margins lay the great tundra zones, where hardy vegetation carpet the ground in brief summers and animal life exploded in seasonal abundance. Caribou, musk oxen, and countless smaller creatures thrived in this open landscape, their migrations following the rhythm of seasons that were more extreme but no less predictable than our own. Perhaps most wondrous of all was how the Ice Age world demonstrated Earth's capacity for different kinds of beauty. The aurora borealis danced across skies that stretched further south than today, painting the ice sheets in sheets of green and blue light. The sun reflected off vast ice surfaces, creating displays of light and color that had no parallel in the modern world. Glacial lakes of the most intense blue captured meltwater from the ice sheet edges, creating jewel-like bodies of water set in landscapes of white and grey. The Ice Age world was also a world of subtle seasons. Even at maximum ice, the Earth continued its annual dance around the sun. Spring brought increased melting at the ice sheet edges, creating temporary lakes and rushing streams. Summer saw the brief emergence of flowers and insects on the tundra, while autumn painted the sparse vegetation in brilliant colors that contrasted dramatically with the surrounding ice. Winter brought the aurora and the deep quiet of a world wrapped in snow and ice. As you rest tonight in your warm sanctuary, remember that this frozen world existed just yesterday in geological terms. The same Earth that cradles you now once wore this icy beauty, demonstrating our planet's capacity for transformation while maintaining the fundamental processes that make life possible. The Ice Age world wasn't a failure or catastrophe, but simply another way of being beautiful. Another chapter in Earth's ongoing climate story. The ice had reached its maximum extent, but even at this peak, the seeds of change were already being sown. The same cosmic forces that had brought the Ice Age were slowly, imperceptibly beginning to shift once again. The Great Melting. Imagine the gentlest possible awakening, not the jarring buzz of an alarm, but the gradual lightening of dawn seeping through your windows, bringing warmth that slowly, tenderly dissolves away the night's coolness. This is how the last Ice Age ended, not with catastrophic collapse, but with a patient, beautiful melting that unfolded over 10,000 years of gradually warming summers and increasingly gentle winters. Tonight, as you rest in the comfort of our current warm period, let your mind witness this magnificent transformation as Earth slowly awakened from its icy sleep. Around 20,000 years ago, Those same cosmic forces that had brought the Ice Age began their gradual shift toward warmth. The Milankovitch cycles, Earth's slow orbital dance with the Sun, started to favor the northern hemisphere with slightly more intense summer sunshine. The change was subtle at first, perhaps an extra hour of sunlight here, a degree or two of additional warmth there. But over centuries, these small increments accumulated like drops of water, eventually filling a vast basin. The great melting began at the margins, where the ice sheets met the world beyond. Picture the edges of these continent-sized glaciers on a warm summer day 18,000 years ago. Instead of winter's perfect silence, the air filled with the gentle music of running water. Meltwater streams appeared along the ice fronts, carrying away tiny fragments of the great sheets that had dominated the landscape for millennia. These streams merged into rivers, which carved channels through the glacial debris, creating the first tentative pathways for the massive transformation to come. What makes this melting so remarkable is its creativity. As the ice retreated, it didn't simply disappear, it sculpted, carved, and created as it went. The retreating glaciers left behind some of Earth's most beautiful landscapes. The Finger Lakes of New York, carved deep and narrow by ice, flowing like slow rivers through mountain valleys. The Great Lakes themselves, vast depressions gouged by ice and then filled with meltwater to become inland seas. The fjords of Norway and Alaska, where glaciers carved spectacular valleys that the rising ocean later flooded with seawater. Imagine following one of these great meltwater rivers as it carved its way across the newly exposed landscape. The torrents carried not just water, but the accumulated debris of millennia, rocks, sand, and soil that the ice had collected during its patient advance. These materials were spread across vast areas, creating some of the most fertile soils on Earth. The rich farmlands of the American Midwest, the productive plains of Northern Europe, even the gentle hills of your local countryside may well be gifts from the retreating Ice Age glaciers. The melting ice sheets created temporary lakes of staggering size. Lake Agassiz, formed by meltwater trapped between the retreating ice and higher ground, covered an area larger than all the current Great Lakes combined. For thousands of years, this vast body of water dominated the center of North America, its shores supporting forests and wildlife in a landscape still emerging from ice. When natural dams of ice and debris eventually gave way, Lake Agassiz drained in floods of unimaginable scale, carving river valleys and depositing sediments across thousands of miles. As more ice melted and flowed back to the oceans, sea levels around the world began to rise with the stately pace of a slowly filling bathtub. Coastlines that had been exposed for tens of thousands of years gradually disappeared beneath returning waters. The land bridges that had connected continents became submerged, creating the island nations and coastal configurations we know today. This rising sea brought marine life back to areas that had been dry land throughout the Ice Age, creating new ecosystems where terrestrial and marine worlds met. Perhaps most beautifully, the melting ice revealed landscapes that had been hidden for millennia. As the great sheets retreated, they exposed bedrock polished to a mirror finish by the patient grinding of ice. Entire mountain ranges emerged like sleeping giants awakening, their peaks and valleys carved into new configurations by the ice that had covered them. The exposed land was initially barren, but life followed the retreating ice with remarkable speed as plants, animals, and eventually early humans colonized the newly available territories. The Great Melting also demonstrated Earth's remarkable capacity for readjustment. As the enormous weight of ice was removed, the land itself began to slowly rise, like a mattress regaining its shape after a heavy sleeper gets up. This process, called isostatic rebound, continues today in areas once covered by ice sheets. Parts of Scandinavia and northern Canada are still rising by several inches per decade, a reminder that our planet continues to adjust to the removal of ice that melted thousands of years ago. What's particularly wonderful about this transformation is how it prepared the stage for our current world. The melting ice age created the landscape features we consider normal. The Great Lakes, the river systems, the fertile valleys, the coastal configurations that define our continents. The stable, warm climate that emerged from this great melting, our current interglacial period, has provided the consistent conditions that allowed human civilization to develop and flourish. Tonight, as you lie in your comfortable bed, remember that you live in the immediate aftermath of this great melting. The stable climate that has supported all of recorded human history, the familiar landscapes outside your window, even the seasonal patterns you know and love, all emerged from this patient, beautiful transformation as Earth slowly awakened from its most recent ice age. The Great Melting wasn't an ending, but a beginning, the start of the warm, stable Holocene period that continues today. But the Ice Age itself left permanent gifts written in stone and soil across our world. The world we inherited. As you settle deeper into your warm blankets tonight, take a moment to feel the profound connection between your present comfort and the ancient world of ice we've journeyed through together. The room around you, the landscape outside your window, even the climate that cradles your daily life, all of these exist within the gentle aftermath of that great Ice Age transformation. You are living in a world shaped by ice, inheriting landscapes carved by glaciers, resting in the warm interglacial period that began when the great sheets finally retreated. Step outside your home tomorrow, and everywhere you look, you'll see the signatures of Ice Age artistry written across the land. If you live near the Great Lakes, you're witnessing some of Ice Age Earth's most magnificent creations, vast inland seas that exist only because glaciers once gouged enormous basins in the continent's heart, then filled them with meltwater as they retreated. The gentle rolling hills of the Midwest were sculpted by ice streams and deposited by glacial meltwater. Even the rocky coasts of Maine and the fjords of the Pacific Northwest bear the unmistakable polish of ice that ground and carved solid stone into landscapes of breathtaking beauty. Look closely at any natural landscape, and you can read the Ice Age story in its features. Those scattered boulders sitting inexplicably in fields far from any bedrock? They're glacial erratics, rocks carried hundreds of miles by moving ice and gently deposited when the glaciers melted. The fertile soil of farmlands across northern regions, much of it is ground up rock flour, created by glaciers patiently grinding bedrock into the fine particles that now support agriculture. The very configuration of rivers and valleys reflects the Ice Age legacy, as meltwater carved new channels and ancient waterways were redirected by advancing and retreating ice. But the Ice Age's gifts to our world extend far beyond landscape features. The stable, warm climate period we've enjoyed for the past 10,000 years, what scientists call the Holocene, emerged directly from that great melting. This climatic stability has been so consistent, so reliable, that it has provided the foundation for all human civilization. Agriculture developed during this warm period. Cities were built. Art, science, philosophy, and technology all flourished within this gentle climate cocoon that exists in the peaceful aftermath of ice. Consider the seasonal rhythms you know and love, the predictable cycle of spring's awakening, summer's abundance, autumn's harvest, and winter's quiet rest. These familiar patterns exist within the same orbital cycles that once brought ice sheets to your doorstep. We live during a time when those cosmic forces favor warmth and stability, creating the reliable seasons that have supported human development. Your enjoyment of a snowy winter day or a warm summer afternoon connects you to the same planetary systems that once choreographed the advance and retreat of continental ice sheets. The remnants of the Ice Age world still exist around us, like beautiful memories preserved in Earth's most remote places. In Greenland and Antarctica, ice sheets continue their ancient existence, holding within their frozen layers the compressed snow of thousands of years. High in the world's mountains, alpine glaciers flow down valleys carved by their much larger Ice Age predecessors, offering glimpses of the slow, patient processes that once dominated entire continents. Even more subtle Ice Age remnants persist in unexpected places. The permafrost of Alaska and Siberia contains soils and organic matter frozen during the Ice Age and preserved until today. Scientists studying these frozen time capsules can reconstruct ancient climates, vegetation, and even extract DNA from long-extinct Ice Age creatures. In some deep caves, ice formations created during the last Ice Age still exist, maintaining their frozen vigil tens of thousands of years after the world above them warmed. Perhaps most remarkably, we ourselves carry the Ice Age within our very genes. Modern humans lived through the entire last Ice Age, adapting to its landscapes, migrating across its land bridges, and developing the cultural and technological innovations that allowed our species to thrive in diverse environments. The creativity, adaptability, and cooperation that define human civilization were all honed during those Ice Age millennia. We are, in a very real sense, children of the Ice Age. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, let yourself feel embraced by this deep story. The comfort of your warm bed exists within Earth's current warm breath between Ice Ages. The stability of your daily weather patterns reflects the same orbital mechanics that once brought mile-thick ice to regions that now know only gentle seasons. The very ground beneath your home was shaped, directly or indirectly, by the patient artistry of Ice Age glaciers. But perhaps most wonderfully, understanding our Ice Age inheritance offers a profound sense of perspective on time and change. The dramatic transformation from ice world to warm world reminds us that Earth operates on timescales that dwarf human experience, yet create the stage on which all our daily dramas unfold. We live in deep time, surrounded by ancient processes, inheriting landscapes millions of years in the making. The Ice Age also offers a meditation on Earth's capacity for both change and continuity. The same planet that once wore ice sheets like a glittering garment now provides the stable warmth that supports billions of lives. The same orbital forces that brought the Ice Age continue their cosmic dance, reminding us that we live within natural cycles far greater than ourselves. As sleep approaches, let the Ice Age story settle into your consciousness like gentle snow. You are part of this continuing story, living in the warm chapter that follows the world of ice, inheriting landscapes of incredible beauty, carved by processes of unimaginable patience. Rest well in your warm sanctuary, cradled by Earth's current gentleness, surrounded by the echoes of Ice Age artistry that will endure for millions of years to come. The living ice, life in the frozen world. Tonight, as you rest in your warm sanctuary, surrounded by the gentle sounds of modern life, let your mind journey back to discover one of the Ice Age's most remarkable secrets. This frozen world was not empty or lifeless, but teeming with extraordinary creatures, perfectly adapted to landscapes of ice and tundra. The last Ice Age was not a time of barren desolation, but rather a chapter when Earth wore a different kind of beauty, one populated by magnificent animals that seemed drawn from the realm of dreams. Imagine walking across the vast grasslands that stretched between the great ice sheets and the warmer regions to the south. These weren't the forests we know today, but endless steppes of hardy grasses and herbs, maintained by the unique climate of the Ice Age world. The cold, dry conditions and powerful winds prevented trees from taking hold across vast areas, creating instead an ecosystem unlike anything in our modern world, the mammoth steppe, named for its most iconic inhabitant. Picture the woolly mammoth moving across these ancient grasslands with the unhurried dignity of a living mountain. Standing up to 11 feet tall at the shoulder, covered in a luxurious coat of dark fur that could grow 3 feet long, these magnificent creatures were perfectly designed for their Ice Age world. Their curved tusks, sometimes reaching 16 feet in length, weren't just for display but served as tools for sweeping snow away from vegetation, stripping bark from the scattered trees, and establishing social hierarchies within their herds. What makes the mammoth particularly wondrous is how completely it belonged to its frozen world. Beneath that famous shaggy coat lay a thick layer of fat that insulated them from temperatures that would challenge any modern elephant. Their ears were small compared to their tropical relatives, a beautiful adaptation that prevented heat loss in their Arctic environment. Even their feet were specially designed for Ice Age life, with broad, padded soles that distributed their enormous weight across snow and soft ground, like natural snowshoes. But the mammoth steppe supported far more than just mammoths. Woolly rhinoceros, equally impressive with their thick coats and massive horns, grazed alongside the mammoths in peaceful coexistence. These weren't the aggressive creatures of popular imagination, but gentle giants who used their horns primarily for sweeping snow away from vegetation and occasionally for social displays within their own kind. Giant cave bears, larger than any bear alive today, emerged from their winter dens each spring to forage across the Ice Age landscapes. Despite their intimidating size, some standing over 10 feet tall when reared on their hind legs, these magnificent creatures were primarily vegetarian, using their enormous strength to dig roots and strip berries from hardy Ice Age plants. Perhaps most remarkable of all were the vast herds that moved across these ancient landscapes in migrations that would dwarf anything in our modern world. Reindeer and caribou moved in columns that stretched beyond the horizon, following ancient pathways that connected summer feeding grounds with winter shelters. Massive bison, larger and more robust than their modern descendants, created thunderous stampedes across the frozen steppes. Wild horses, ancestors of our domestic breeds, ran in great herds across landscapes that knew no fences or boundaries. The Ice Age world even had its own version of lions, cave lions, the largest cats that ever lived, who stalked these abundant herds with the patient skill of perfectly adapted predators. These weren't the golden lions of African savannas, but magnificent creatures with thick, pale coats designed for hunting in snowy landscapes. Packs of direwolves, larger and more powerful than modern wolves, worked together to bring down prey in a world where cooperation meant survival. What's truly beautiful about Ice Age life is how it demonstrates nature's infinite creativity in adapting to different worlds. The giant Irish elk, with antlers spanning up to 12 feet from tip to tip, weren't clumsy giants, but graceful creatures who used their magnificent crowns for display and communication across the open steppes. Saber-toothed cats developed their distinctive fangs not for show, but as precision tools for hunting the thick-skinned giants of their era. Even smaller creatures reflected the Ice Age world's unique character. Ground sloths the size of small cars moved through Ice Age forests with surprising grace, using their massive claws to strip vegetation from trees. Giant beavers as large as black bears built dams and lodges in the meltwater streams that flowed along glacier margins. Everywhere you might have looked in this ancient world, life had found ways to not just survive, but thrive in conditions that seem almost mythical to our modern eyes. As you settle deeper into your blankets tonight, consider how these Ice Age creatures lived their entire lives within landscapes that we can barely imagine. They knew the sound of glacial winds, the sight of aurora dancing over endless ice sheets, the feeling of walking across permafrost that stretched for thousands of miles. Their daily rhythms were tuned to the extreme seasons of an Ice Age world. Brief, intense summers followed by long, dark winters that tested every adaptation. Yet these creatures weren't struggling or suffering in their frozen world, any more than a polar bear struggles in today's Arctic or a tropical bird suffers in the Amazon. They were perfectly at home in their Ice Age paradise, as adapted to their world as we are to ours. The mammoth steppe supported more large animal biomass than any ecosystem in our modern world, a testament to how productive and life-supporting the Ice Age environment truly was. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, let yourself imagine the profound silence of those ancient landscapes, broken only by the distant calls of mammoths, communicating across the steppes, the soft padding of enormous paws on snow, the gentle sounds of vast herds moving through landscapes painted silver by starlight. You're falling asleep in a world that inherited the artistic legacy of ice. But these magnificent creatures lived their entire evolutionary story within the world that ice created. sweet dreams of the living Ice Age, where giants walk gently across a planet transformed